Hi everyone and welcome back to Northwestern Models TV, and today I'm going to show you how to build this diesel refueling point kit from Skytrex. It's in 00 gauge, so it's ideal for a lot of the modern image layouts which we're starting to see these days. So let's get started. Right, so let's get the packet open and see what we've got in the pack. Now, if it's a traditional Skytrex pack, chances are it's going to have a drawing in there as well as all the parts. So, nothing else in there, I don't think. No, doesn't look like it. So we've got what look like roof pieces, possible bit of rail or something. They look like the stanchions to hold the roof in place. That's two of those. That looks like a base ready to go, and there is a little bit of detail you should be able to see in there. It's got some fixing holes and a little grid marked on there. So a smaller bag full of detailing parts, obviously like a compressor and a pump and a coil of wire and so on, and of course we have the overall finished picture, because with the Skytrex models this is basically the instructions that you get. So I'll put them there so I can see how it's supposed to go together, let's say. So with this kit we've got two different materials in use. We've got resin for a number of the components, and we also have white metal as well. And we can simply just go through all the parts, make sure you can sort of identify where each part is supposed to go. I'm going to start by building up the main structure first, and then add the smaller detailing bits in afterwards, because I think that's going to be easier to do. With the resin, well, with all the parts, to be honest, once you have removed all the flash from them, which is the extra little bits of material which you might just be able to see on the end here, you can see it's a tiny little bit there, it's worthwhile giving all the parts a good scrub in some warm soapy water, so that when you come to paint the finished model, the paint has a good chance of actually sticking to everything, rather than the release agent making things a little bit awkward, because chances are that the paint will stick to it, but it may start flaking off after a while. So to remove the bits of flash, I mean that piece is actually pretty good. It's dead simple. You can just use a craft knife and just go along all the edges, just removing the light bits of flash that just come out of the mouldings. If you wanted to, for some of the more stubborn areas, you could use a small file, but you must be careful when you file resin, which are the grey components here, as the dust that is created from it is hazardous to health. So that's a health and safety warning, and obviously if you're using a craft knife, just be careful that you don't cut your fingers to pieces, which I'm sure most of you are, well, if not all of you, are more than capable of doing. I'll do those afterwards. So that's the resin bits together. So we've got two sides of the roof and the base. Now, just looking at this, at how this may well go together, I'm going to cut the uprights for the roof, well, for the cover. Hopefully it should go with a craft knife. Yes, this is white metal, so it's a soft metal, which does bend rather easily, so try and not let it bend if you can. As you can see, got a little bit of a bend in that, but it will straighten back out with a little bit of care. You should be able to straighten it out quite nicely. If worse comes to worse, you could always very gently heat it up a little bit just to soften the metal a bit. That's looking a lot better now. So that's that one. These other bits are then just offcuts and scrap, so you don't need to worry about those. You could probably use some side cutters to cut these pieces off. I just don't have to actually have mine handy, which is quite rare for me, so I'm just using the knife because it's more than capable of doing the job that I want it to do for this. And again, I'm just going to straighten that out a wee bit. There we go. And this last piece, which looks like a bit of a joining piece. Again, just work the knife through. Obviously, if you do use a knife, keep your fingers away from the edge of the blade so you don't cut yourself. Come on, so last little bit of flash. So just move the offcuts and things out of the way. So when it comes to cleaning up the little bits of flash and the remaining tab parts on white metal, it's a bit difficult to do it with a craft knife. So it is worthwhile getting yourself a set of needle files, which we also sell in the shop. So a nice pack of them of different shapes and designs, and you can quite simply just go along and just clean up the edges quite nicely. Because it's a soft metal that the needle files will very quickly get rid of the actual little bits of flash and things on there. But obviously, with it being soft, if you keep on going with a file, it is going to go into the moulding for the part, which then may mean that there's gaps and things. But where the parts join, it's always worthwhile giving everything a good clean with a needle file anyway, because then it gives a nice surface for the glue or solder, if you're daring enough, to grip what it needs to. So let's just continue putting this together. So this particular kit is ideal really if you like your diesels and you're doing a little bit of a depot scene perhaps, or just a little basic refueling point, perhaps in a maintenance yard or something like that. You could pop it between two tracks and have one side with perhaps some oil tankers in there, or fuel tankers I should say, and then the other side can be the side that they fill up the diesels with. So it's quite adaptable, and it's quite a nice little kit, so it's not a massive big kit. You can see that's it's about it's about 15 centimeters long, so it's not massive. It's not a massive kit at all in size once it's finished. And I suppose in some ways, if you are a more skilled modeller, perhaps you might not want to use the base that's provided. You may want to just build it up and just stick it on the baseboard itself, or if you've made like the ground level up somewhat, you could always just stick it onto the top of there with a few little alterations perhaps. So we have a choice of how we would stick this together. Now with white metal you can use a low melt solder, or you could use super glue. For me personally, I prefer to use super glue because it's just a little bit more convenient, and plus with multimedia, by multimedia I mean we're using 2 different materials, it can be a lot easier just to have one glue out rather than having lots of things around the workbench. So, as with any kit, it's worthwhile doing a bit of a dry run first. Now, the uprights go in the main holes in the middle, there and there, and I think I'm going to have to drill those out a little bit so that the pegs on the bottom of the uprights actually go in. Because if I show you, I was going to say, if I show you there, you'll see that it hasn't quite gone all the way through, so there's a little bit there. So we can either chop a bit more of the peg off, or easier, we just drill out those holes right through, which is easy enough to do with it being you know, resin. So let me just grab a drill bit of near enough for the appropriate size, which is going to be about that one, I think. And let's see if we've got a drill piece to fit. That's a bit big. What you can do to make it a little bit easier to get your drill through there is to get one of these, which is a pin drill, or a little handheld drill, and you can put like a little drawing pin in the end of it. You see there's a bit of a hole there, and it just allows you to drill through at a nice rate, so that you're not you know, going at it with a big battery drill or something like that, and it's a small little detailing model. You want to take your time with things and go through, and there we are. You can see I'm through the first one, and let's do the same with the other one. Probably made it a little bit oversized, but that's no problem. The glue will fill the remaining hole. But that also gives us a little bit of flexibility if the kit isn't, you know, if it's a little bit tight. So that's that one done. And whilst I'm drilling holes, there is a third hole there, which I'm going to chuck a smaller drill bit through. That is obviously for a standpipe or something a little bit later on. So whilst I've got plenty of room to get to it, I'm just going to drill that out. Let's put a small, really small one through first. And then swap that for a bigger one. And no prizes for guessing that my little pin drill just got a little bit smaller. And I don't think that one's going to fit in there. So I need a medium one. I am hoping to get some of these pin drills and drill bits, modelling drill bits, in stock in our tool section relatively soon. Obviously just keep an eye out on the website and on our social media pages for when they eventually arrive. Right, so we've now got our base ready to go. Our stands sit in there, and they're probably a little bit long now at the bottom, so we can trim those off. And all I'm doing is basically a very simple little dry run just to see how this all goes together, because although the pictures are pretty good, there's nothing beats having a good look at how it assembles together to give you a bit of an idea of how you might want to sort of glue it together. And there we go, that's sort of looking something like the drawing. So what I think we'll do is trim the bottom of these pegs on the uprights. I was going to grab my cutters, I think on the layout at the moment, and then we'll see about getting them stuck onto the base, and then we can just build it up from there. So if you just bear with me a minute, I'll go and grab my cutters. The joys of having the modelling bench in the model railway room. Right, so I'm going to cut this, the end of this sprue, about halfway up, which I hope you can see there, about where I'm going, about halfway up the end of it. And again, these cutters are available in our tool section, so I'll just clean up where we've just chopped it, and just simply I'm just going to try it in the hole. And there we are, that's sitting in there a lot better, and I think with a bit of glue that's going to stay in there quite nicely, so that'll be okay. Of course it's top heavy and it's probably unbalanced, so it is going to wobble about until we've got some glue in there. But let's get the other one done as well, so everything's at the same kind of stage. There we are, bit of effort through them. Make sure it goes in the hole, which it does. Right, so glue wise, what can we use? Well, personally I'm going to recommend Deluxe Materials Rocket Rapid Glue. It's a relatively quick setting super glue, about 5 to 10 seconds, and it actually bonds, and then it does and it will go off, and it goes off quite strong. Well, if you leave it for like half an hour or so, it really is pretty solid on there. So that's all I'm going to use, and because we're not doing some fine detail work at the moment, I'm going to use it straight from the bottle, and just put it around the base and the little peg on the bottom of these. I'm just going to do one at a time. I'm not going to try and do both of them at the same time, because that's when you run out of time with the glue, let's say. And just sort of making sure that it's the right way around with the details towards the outside, and quite simply just stick it in and try and get it as lined up as we can. I'm just going to hold it there in place for a bit, just putting a little bit of weight on it. Try and resist the urge to blow on the glue, because that then gets moisture in there and it doesn't necessarily make the join set any quicker. In fact, it can lead to problems later on if there's a bit too much moisture in the air around it, as the moisture gets into the glue and it then doesn't like to stay in place after a while, let's say. Let's just put my personal recommendation there. Right, now for the other side, you can see obviously it's set enough to hold the first one in place, and again making sure that it's the right way round with the details on the outside. Again, just pop it in the hole and just sort of looking at it, just see that it's in line. With it being white metal, you do get a little bit of play, so you can tweak it just a little bit very gently to twist it into position if you've gone a bit skew-if with it, but as long as you're not like 45 degrees out or something, which I know you won't be, you'll be okay. So there we are, so we'll just leave that for a minute or so just to harden off a little bit. He says as he then goes to try and adjust it a bit. So yeah, so the next piece is this long piece in the middle, and if you can see there, if the camera will focus enough, there is like a little ridge on one side, and then it drops down at each end, and then if you flip it over, there's like a channel in the middle there, which you probably can't quite see on camera, but you will see it when you build the kit up. And basically this is the gutter for the roof piece, so this goes between the two metal uprights, with the ends, well, where the uprights go is the end, each end of this chunky section in the middle is where that goes, so So these bits overhang at each end on there. So we're going to need a little bit of glue on each end, and we're just going to drop it in, and it should hopefully fit in the gap. What do you know? The gap's a slightly different size, but it does fit in there. So plan B is to put a bit more glue on, but we're going to put it on the stands first. This is the idea, like you should always do a dry run first, which was my mistake there, to see where things go properly when you're at each sort of stage. So the trick now is to try and line it up so it sort of overhangs relatively equally. And I think that's probably as good as I'm going to get that on there. So as you can see, it's starting to come together now. Obviously it is always going to be quite a delicate structure because of the nature of it. It's got two legs to it. It's not ever going to be the strongest structure in the world. It's obviously designed not to be tampered with when it's on the layout. It's there in place, and there it should remain. So onto the actual main roof piece. Now these are resin. And if you look on the underside, which is this side I'm showing you now, there's two location points there, and there's also a ridge of crinkly tin effect which matches the main crinkly tin effect there. So you want this crinkly tin effect on the underside to be pointing outside on the model. So for this one, we'll just flip it over that way, so that is for that side. And then with this one, exactly the same but the other way around on there, so that if you were to view from a lower angle, you'll see that the crinkly edge is there rather than a sort of humped and smooth edge on there. So again, I'm just going to, you can see, as a trial fit, that actually the location tabs don't really line up with the legs underneath. But you can easily just use your eyes and just locate it off the main gutter piece that you put in earlier, and just get it so it looks right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the arms off the uprights, again just one side at a time, to just stick it on, because I think that's going to be easier than trying to locate where it is on the underside of the roof piece. And make sure that's the right way around. Line it up with the guttery piece and just pop it on there and just let gravity do the work. And just spin it around so I can do the other side. And again, just lining it up and dropping it down. Like I say, just let gravity do the work, because you don't want to put too much weight or pressure on it, because the legs, they are relatively thin, they're quite delicate, so we don't want to be putting too much weight on there. But you could very carefully just squeeze it together each side, just to make sure that the glue's actually got it on there, and that's looking to me pretty good. I'm quite pleased with that, because this is obviously like the first time I've ever built this kit. So, right, so we're now on to the little detailing parts. So I'm going to put that to one side just to dry out a bit more. Put the lid back on the glue. Let's clear some of this debris away. Right, so let's open the little bag and see what we've got in here. Right, if we can get the bits out of it. There we go. Nothing else in there. Good. Right, so we've got what looks like a little pump cabinet type thing. So it looks like we could have a pump on the side there. In fact, if we look at the diagram, it is this unit here, and obviously we've got a big pump, big hose type thing out of there, obviously for filling the diesel locos up with. And there is the main pipe, which will obviously go onto there, like probably around there somewhere. We've got a little nice piece of copper wire which will glue on the end of there. Might have to drill a tiny little hole up there or something. We've also got another little cabinet, which is easy enough to do, and we've also got a tap as well, which just needs a few bits just tidying off on there. Again, we've got a little selection of white metal and resin parts here. So again, it's the same as with the main parts of the kit. Just go through and deflash all the parts with a little tap, which you probably can't see in the camera there because it probably won't focus enough on it. Do make sure that you try and leave the spout on the end of there, so you don't want to accidentally chop that little bit off when you're cleaning up with the flash. So as I did before, I'm just going to go around and just clean everything up as best I can, get the worst off. And again, this little tap actually has a little location pin on the bottom, which we'll be cutting down because it is far too long, but we'll make sure it fits in the hole first and then make any alterations, because sometimes you either need to make the hole bigger or just take the pin off and just glue it in. Hopefully this will go in quite nicely, and I have a feeling it will do, because most of the fittings with Skytrex are pretty good. So let's just grab that base back. That should go in there. Okay, so that might need a bit more filing work. As you can see, it's not quite going in there, but it will do a little bit of work. And like I say, if I trim that down a bit, I'm sure we'll get that in there. So let's do that. Just not quite a technical term, but let's just whiz it with the file. Just to reduce the diameter on it. And we'll try it in the hole again. It's getting nearer. I think that'll be quite happy in there. So as you can see, we've now got a little tap there, so I'll quickly glue that in. So that's another piece of the puzzle back together. Put that in the hole. And just line it up, make it look quite nice and pretty. And again, sort of around the base of this, you could quite easily make it look well serviced, to help disguise some like the glue joints on there. Because obviously you can have lots of like oil barrels and things around there, you know, oil stains and all sorts. You can really go to town sort of weathering and detailing this kit, because diesel depots, like the predecessors of steam depots, are notoriously filthy places. You know, oil gets dropped off locomotives and everything all the time, so you could really go to town and sort of detail and weather it all up quite nicely. You could, if you wanted, even do this as a derelict one. Really, you know, weather it all up and have, you know, weeds and plants and things on it. And just, you know, well, obviously it's entirely up to you. It's your layout, it's your model. You can do whatever you want. So let's just stick that extra little cabinet on at the other end. Now I'm literally building this up to how it is on the Skytrex photograph, well, the reference photograph, let's say. So hopefully that's going to stay on there. So on to the final and most probably the complicated bit of all of the small fiddly bits, let's say, is this little pump house cabinet thing. So let's give it a bit of a clean with the knife first to just try and remove some of the flash from it. It is actually quite a good moulding on here. And as you can see, easily cuts with a knife. You just got to make sure you cut the right pieces off so that it looks pretty good. I mean, admittedly, a few little dents and things in it will probably look quite authentic. Show that it's been used. As anyone who goes to a petrol filling station for the car, you can guarantee that there'll be a couple of little dents and things in there, and it's no different on the railways. Believe me, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Right, so that's my cabinet, pump house thing ready to go. So now to tidy up the main pipe, which is white metal. So again, relatively easy. There's not a lot of, if any, sort of flash on this piece. Actually, there's a few little bits, but nothing mega to worry about. So let's give it a quick go over the file. So, tidy it up. Again, with it being white metal, it will bend easily, so just make sure you try and bend it back straight. So use the reference photo as much as you can to see where the components go on here. I can see that there's a nice little dimple in the cabinet at one end for this pipe to sort of go into. So we're going to stick it in there. And also glue the little brackets as well, just to add that extra little bit of security for it. Just try and sort of get it as upright as you can. Just hold it in place for a minute or so. Right. So the last piece to go on is a big loop of wire. Now if we look at the picture diagram, we can see that this wire goes all the way down loops around on the floor a bit, and then it looks like it goes into the actual little nozzly thing, which seems to be is part of the moulding on the little cabinet. Pretty much as you would with a petrol filling station. Anyway, it's, that's where the nozzle goes back in, to keep everything nice and tidy. So it's going to be quite fun to bend this and glue this into shape. So let's have a bit of a go and see if we can make something like it. Now, I think it's probably going to be easiest to glue one end and then the other. I'm just going to try and sort of mould this to a sort of shape first, so we can sort of see, right, it's going to get glued on there, that wants to go up there a bit, so we can bend that up a tad there, and sort of shape it a bit so it looks like it's going to sit on the floor a bit, and bend it up there. And this is literally just trial and error to how you want it to look, and obviously once it's sort of glued to a point you can probably alter it within reason. I think it will sort of bend relatively easily, and sort of just got to try and make it look as natural as it can, like a a dangling fuel pipe would do. So if need be, go and have a look at the local petrol station, when you next fill the car up, and see how the hoses naturally sort of hang on there. So I think what we'll do is we'll glue that bottom piece in first, because we can do a nice sort of straight edge on that, which will give us a nice bit of something solid on there to really hold it in place, because it is a very delicate little item, and it's one of those I can see that it is going to come off a few times, this. So if you give it enough of a chance to sort of stay in some sort of position, we can then move everything else around afterwards. So just hold it on there as best we can. It might take a little while to go off. We'll see. Like I say, I think it's going to be the fiddliest job on the whole kit is going to be fitting this little bad boy. And believe me, I think it is a bad boy. Ah! Just hold it down a bit. There we go. Wedge that in there. Just holding it down with a piece of old scrap white metal. Nope, I think the glue's gone off a bit too much now. So, try again. I might give that a little bit of a clean first, perhaps. It may be that we can always trim this bit of wire down, and that they've given us plenty to go at. And just by cleaning the end of this with a file, what I'm hoping is that it's going to give a bit of a key for the glue to sort of try and grab it a bit easier. It's one of those, I have a feeling that quite a few people may get a little bit stressed with this bit, but at the end of the day, it's a model and it doesn't have to be perfect. So you just take your time with it and you'll get something near enough eventually, I'm pretty sure. So at the moment it's a case of just letting the glue try and grab it and actually dry enough so that we can very carefully manoeuvre it and shape it and glue it at the other end. Because I've glued it at this end because we've got more room to glue it than we have out the end of the, literally out of the end of the pipe at this end. So that seems to have settled down enough. So just very carefully now, I'm just going to keep putting a little bit of weight on there. Just going to try and shape this wire a bit. It's got loose again. And just get it somewhere near to where we want it. As you can see, it has indeed come apart. If anyone said model railways were easy, they were lying to you. It's a very joyful hobby, but there are things which sometimes are a little bit on the difficult side. And this kit, or this particular part of the kit, of this particular kit, is certainly one of them. Now I can sort of see the length that we need. I know it's just moved it again. I'm just going to chop the very end off that, so we don't need to have as much on there. What I'm hoping is if we can get that to sort of wedge itself and hold itself there, or at least if I can try and hold it in place with that, and then might be able to get a bit of glue at the other end and just get a blob on there. Like I say, I think this is going to be the one bit that people are really going to struggle with this kit. It is very fiddly. And I am now that's on there, I'm literally going to leave that a few minutes to go off, because I don't want to touch it because I know it's just going to sort of come apart at the moment. So I'll be back in a mini moment. Right, so it's been a few minutes now, so I'm hoping that our little pump unit has now dried off enough to be able to handle it to stick it in place. Now, on the photograph it shows that it goes in the middle, and there's a little sort of hashed area in the base piece there, and I'm assuming that is where the Skytrex have intended it to be stuck, and it does look like that from here. Whether we were supposed to cut that out beforehand or not, I don't know, but for the sakes and purposes I'm just going to land this on that hashed area so that it's sort of, well, there in the right kind of place. So I'm try and be as careful as I can with this, as obviously I don't want that little pipe to come off, and we're just going to get it in there and leave well alone, I think. Some glue on. Plenty on there. As it is the most fiddly little part of the whole thing, and it's a tight fit in there, I'll tell you that now. But it is in there. I'm just going to hold it down in place for a minute. I mean, obviously you can't quite see there on the camera, but it is in there. I'll just let the glue go off, which should grab it. Obviously with that pump being under the cover, that little wire is going to be quite safe from any general knocks and bangs and things. And it does look like I probably ought to have taken, you know, that little square out in the middle. But if I just turn up to show you, you can now see that it is in there. So had I taken that little square out, the top would have a little bit more clearance from underneath the bottom of the roof, but I can't see that making the vast amount of difference if, like me, you've forgotten to cut that bit out, or you weren't aware that you're supposed to cut that bit out. So, and it's a bit too late for me to cut it out now because I can't get to it because I've built the roof. So that's how that's going, and it's as simple as that. I'm happy with it, and that will do. So there we are, that is how to relatively quickly and basically assemble this 00 gauge diesel refueling point from Skytrex. It's a nice kit to put together. There are a few little fiddly bits as you've seen, but it'll make a nice little model and is perfect for anybody who is doing a diesel depot, DMU depot, you know, anything to do with sort of diesels or refueling them. This is an absolutely perfect little kit for you. So anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, because we've got plenty more how-to videos and lots more coming along in the next few weeks or so. So until next time, happy modelling.